Hey guys, tonight we're going to explore the strange and gentle remedies Victorians used for insomnia. Imagine you're lying awake, not because you just finished a true crime documentary or had too much coffee, but because the very air in your room feels heavy, thick with the scent of coal dust and lavender. The only light is a single, hissing gas lamp, casting long, dancing shadows that make the taxidermied owl on the dresser look like it's judging your inability to simply drift off. You probably wouldn't survive a single restless night here, not because of ghosts, but because the sheer weight of your blankets feels like a form of gentle domestic oppression. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And in the comments, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always nice to imagine us all scattered across the globe, united in our search for a good night's rest. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The silence in your bedroom isn't really silence. It's a collection of small, insistent sounds. The slow, heavy tick-tock of the mantel clock, each second landing with deliberate weight. The groan of the house's timber frame as it settles in the cool night air. And beneath it all, the faint, almost imperceptible hiss of the gaslight, burning a soft, yellow, and slightly greasy glow by your bedside. You try to turn onto your side, but the mattress fights back. It's a dense, unyielding landscape stuffed with horsehair, and it seems to have formed a permanent dip where you sleep, not out of comfort, but out of sheer exhaustion. Your room is a testament to the Victorian horror of empty space, a concept they called horror vacui. Every surface is occupied. The walls are covered in a dark, swirling florum wallpaper, a pattern so dense it seems to vibrate slightly in the flickering light. Your mahogany wardrobe, a behemoth of a thing, looms in the corner, its dark wood gleaming. The dresser is a museum of personal artifacts. Porcelain figurines, silver-backed hairbrushes, a scattering of tin-type photographs of relatives with unnervingly stern expressions. Even the floor is mostly hidden beneath a heavy, patterned rug that traps dust with an almost professional efficiency. Historians still argue whether the Victorians perceived this cluttered environment as a comforting, womb-like nest, a defense against the stark realities of the industrial world outside, or as a source of underlying anxiety and poor health. For you, lying here now, it feels less like a cozy nest and more like the walls are slowly closing in. The air is thick, not just with the fumes from the gas lamp and the lingering scent of the coal fire that has now died down to embers, but with the sheer presence of stuff. So much stuff. You stare up at the canopy of your four-poster bed. Heavy velvet curtains are drawn around it, ostensibly to keep out drafts and provide privacy, but their true function tonight seems to be trapping every bit of your exhaled breath and concentrating the stuffiness. It's a little bubble of stale air, all your own. This was considered the height of luxury, a private sanctuary within the home. But as you lie awake, it feels more like being sealed in a very well-decorated box. The air you're breathing has been here for a while, mingling with the scent of the starched linen sheets and the faint, dusty smell of the feather-stuffed pillows. Your gaze drifts to the floor beside the bed. In the dim light, you can just make out the floral pattern on your ceramic chamber pot, a necessary piece of bedroom furniture, of course, but also a silent, slightly fragrant roommate. The very thought of it sitting there, a silent witness to the night, is just one more little detail that chips away at the peace you're so desperately seeking. It's a reminder of the raw, unvarnished realities of life that all this velvet and mahogany is designed to conceal. There's no quick trip to a brightly lit, sterile bathroom here. There is only the cold floor, the porcelain pot, and the darkness. This bedroom, your supposed sanctuary, is actually a battlefield of sensory inputs. The flickering light is a constant low-grade distraction for your eyes, not unlike the blue light of a modern phone screen, preventing your brain from fully powering down. The air quality is questionable at best, a mixture of particulate matter from the fire, fumes from the gas, and the collected dust of 1,000 decorative objects. The oppressive weight of your bedding, from the coarse linen sheets to the heavy wool blankets and the thick quilt on top, restricts your movement. It's all meant to be comfortable, a sign of middle-class prosperity. But tonight, it just feels like another reason you're still awake, staring into the gloom, listening to the clock mark the slow, relentless passage of another sleepless hour. The clock on the mantelpiece chimes 1. The sound is startlingly loud in the quiet room, a sharp, metallic pronouncement of your failure. Lying here is achieving nothing. The velvet canopy seems to be absorbing all the oxygen, and the horsehair mattress has developed a personal grudge against your spine. With a weary sigh that barely disturbs the heavy air, you decide to take action. Throwing back the weighty layers of bedding feels like a genuine act of rebellion. The moment your bare feet touch the cold, wide-planked wooden floor, a shiver runs up your entire body. It's a shock to the system, but an invigorating one. You are awake. You might as well be productively awake. Lighting a single candle, you shield its flickering flame with a cupped hand and venture out of the bedroom. The hallway is a chasm of darkness, populated by looming shadows cast by the hall table and the tall, solemn coat rack that looks suspiciously like a gaunt figure in a top hat. Every creak of the floorboards under your feet sounds like a gunshot in the profound stillness of the house. The rest of your family is asleep, their doors firmly closed, blissfully unaware of your nocturnal wandering. You are alone in this quiet, cold world, a ghost in your own home, hunting for the elusive specter of sleep. You reach the kitchen. Here the air is colder still, carrying the faint, earthy scent of potatoes from the cellar, the sharp tang of soap from the scullery, and the ghost of coal smoke from the great iron stove that now sits dormant and black in the corner. The fire is little more than a bed of softly glowing embers, but it's enough. You recall your doctor's words from your last visit, his voice a low, confident drone as he explained the intimate, almost mystical connection between the stomach and the mind. "An agitated gut, my dear," he had said, tapping his temple, "leads to an agitated brain. The great enemy of modern life," he had declared, was dyspepsia, indigestion, the root of all evils, from melancholy to madness, and most certainly the thief of your slumber. His prescription was not a medicine, but a regimen, a bland, soothing, and utterly uninspired diet, especially in the evening. The goal was to present your digestive system with a task so simple, so profoundly boring, that it would simply process the food without any fuss and allow the rest of your body to power down. It is, in essence, an attempt to bore your own stomach into submission. Following his instructions, you find the tin of arrowroot powder. It's a fine, white, flour-like substance renowned for being easily digestible. You mix a spoonful with a little cold water to make a thin paste, then pour in some milk from the larder, which is cool to the touch. You place the small saucepan over the dying embers, stirring the mixture with a wooden spoon as it slowly, almost reluctantly, thickens into a translucent, gelatinous gruel. There is no sugar, no spice, no pinch of salt. That would be far too exciting. Excitement is the enemy. You pour the pale concoction into a bowl and sit at the heavy wooden kitchen table. The candlelight throws your shadow, huge and distorted, against the whitewashed wall. You take a spoonful. The taste is, well, it's the absence of taste. It is warm, it is smooth, and it is nothing. It has the texture of a cloud and the flavor of a particularly dull memory. It's so unoffensive that it's almost offensive. You take another spoonful and another, the process purely mechanical. Medical historians debate whether this focus on blandness was a genuine health strategy based on the era's limited understanding of digestion, or a reflection of Victorian moral anxieties about pleasure and indulgence. Was a spicy, flavorful meal a sign of a dangerously excitable, passionate character? Eating this, you feel your character is in no danger whatsoever. You remember the doctor's extensive list of forbidden foods. Cheese, especially toasted, was a notorious villain, said to produce the most vivid and terrifying nightmares. Rich meats, pickles, pastries, and anything fried were also blacklisted, considered a declaration of war upon your nervous system. Your gruel, by contrast, is a flag of unconditional surrender. It's the culinary equivalent of a white flag. The theory, as you understand it, is to create a state of perfect neutrality within the body. By consuming nothing that could possibly stimulate, irritate, or even vaguely interest your palate or your stomach lining, you hope to achieve a state of placid equilibrium. The body, freed from the demanding labor of digesting a slice of seed cake or a bit of cured ham, can finally turn its full attention to the business of shutting down. It's a fascinating, if deeply unappetizing, bit of logic. It is the 19th century version of a detox juice cleanse, only without the smug sense of superiority. You finish the bowl. You don't feel full, nor do you feel hungry. You simply feel neutral. A dull warmth spreads through your stomach. Is this the feeling of a placid gut, or is it just the lingering heat from the saucepan? You wash the bowl and spoon in a basin of cold water, your movements slow and deliberate in the quiet dark. The journey back up the stairs seems longer, the shadows in the hallway more profound. You slip back between the cold linen sheets, the oppressive weight of the blankets settling over you once more. You're no longer hungry, but you're not sleepy either. You are simply a person with a very, very bored stomach, lying in the dark, waiting. The bland arrowroot gruel sits in your stomach, a neutral, calming presence. And yet, sleep remains a distant shore. Your mind, it seems, hasn't received the memo from your placid digestive system. It continues to turn over the small anxieties of the day, the remembered slights, the tasks left undone. Lying on your back, staring up into the velvety darkness of the bed canopy, you become aware of a faint, persistent ache. It's a dull throb in your lower back, and a feeling of compression around your ribs, as if you're still wearing a piece of clothing you took off hours ago. And in a way, you are. You're feeling the ghost of your corset. You spent more than 12 hours today tightly laced into a construct of whalebone, steel, and unyielding coutil fabric. From the moment your maid cinched the laces in the morning until you finally unhooked it in the evening, your entire torso was held in a rigid, artificial shape. The ideal was a tiny waist and hourglass figure that proclaimed your status as a delicate, fashionable lady. The reality was a state of permanent low-grade compression. Your lungs couldn't fully expand. Your internal organs were gently but constantly rearranged. Your very posture was dictated not by your skeleton, but by the rigid cage you wore. Now, in the supposed freedom of your nightgown, your body is struggling to remember its natural state. Your muscles, so accustomed to the corset's support, feel weak and unsupported, leading to that nagging backache. Your ribs, released from their daily confinement, feel strangely loose. You take a deep breath, a truly deep one, and it feels like a luxury, a decadent expansion of your chest that was impossible just a few hours ago. It's a strange paradox. The device meant to create an image of perfect, poised femininity was in fact a source of profound physical stress. You shift onto your side, trying to find a comfortable position, and the sensation of phantom compression lingers. Historians and medical professionals of your time were locked in a fierce debate about the corset. On one side, doctors wrote scathing pamphlets, blaming it for everything from consumption and liver failure to hysteria and a weakened moral constitution. They drew gruesome diagrams showing displaced organs, crushed ribs, and deformed spines. On the other side, proponents, including many women, defended it as a vital support for the weak female frame, a tool for maintaining good posture, and an indispensable element of respectability. To go without a corset was to be loose, both literally and morally. It's a classic case where culture and medicine collided. Your own doctor is a moderate, suggesting that tight lacing is the true evil, while a well-fitted corset is perfectly healthful. You've always considered yours to be well-fitted, but as you lie here, feeling the lingering ache, you begin to wonder, could this daily ritual of binding and shaping be contributing to your nightly restlessness? Is it possible that your body, once freed, simply doesn't know how to relax? The constant pressure, the shallow breathing, perhaps it keeps your nervous system in a state of perpetual low-level alert, a fight-or-flight response drawn out over an entire day. You think of the advertisements you've seen in ladies' magazines for health corsets or hygienic stays, which promise to provide the fashionable shape without the supposed dangers. Some were made with elastic panels, others with intricate systems of straps and buckles, all claiming to be scientifically designed. There was even a fringe movement promoting dress reform, advocating for looser, more natural clothing. But for a woman of your class, showing up to afternoon tea in a shapeless, uncorseted gown would be social suicide. It would be like arriving in your night clothes. A quirky and slightly desperate tidbit you once read comes to mind, the idea of a night corset. It was a much lighter, less restrictive garment, sometimes made of soft fabric with minimal boning, intended to provide gentle support during sleep and prevent the body from slumping unattractively. The idea never really caught on, thankfully. The thought of wearing a corset to bed seems like a special kind of nightmare, trading one form of sleeplessness for another. You try to consciously relax the muscles around your ribs. You focus on taking slow, deep breaths, filling your lungs completely, feeling your abdomen rise and fall in a way that was impossible during the day. It feels good, it feels natural, but it also feels foreign. After so many years, the corset's rigid posture has become your default. Slumping, true relaxation, feels like a failure. It's as if the garment has trained not just your body, but your mind to remain perpetually tense, upright, and on guard. The pressure isn't just physical. The corset is a symbol of the immense discipline required of a Victorian woman. Your entire day is structured, from morning calls to evening prayers. Your emotions are to be restrained, your speech measured, your behavior impeccable. The corset is the physical manifestation of that social rigidity. It holds you in, literally and figuratively. And perhaps you think, as you turn over once again in the lumpy, uncooperative bed, that's the problem. After a whole day of being held in, your body and mind have simply forgotten how to let go. The ghost of the whalebone and steel is still there, long after the laces have been loosened, keeping you awake in the dark. The clock downstairs chimes 2, each note a small resonant mockery of your continued consciousness. The arrowroot gruel has failed. The ghost of your corset still aches in your ribs. Desperate times, you recall your doctor saying with a grim little smile, call for decisive measures. His final piece of advice, should the bland diet fail, was something he called a tonic for the nerves. It wasn't a syrup or a pill, it was a shock, a jolt. It was the cold water cure. With a profound sense of resignation, you rise from the bed again. The floorboards feel even colder this time, a sharp, biting cold that seeps into the soles of your feet. Candle in hand, you make your way not to the kitchen, but to the washroom. This is a small, chilly chamber, home to a large ceramic basin and pitcher on a wooden stand, a towel rail, and not much else. There's no cozy bath mat, just a swatch of bare, unforgiving linoleum that feels slick and icy underfoot. The air smells of damp linen and carbolic soap. The hydrotherapy movement was all the rage. It was a mainstream medical practice, praised as a natural, invigorating cure for a host of ailments, particularly those of a nervous disposition, like your own sleeplessness. The theory was beautifully simple. The shock of cold water on the skin would stimulate the entire nervous system, redirect blood flow away from the overexcited brain, and promote a state of healthy, vigorous exhaustion that would inevitably lead to deep sleep. Or, as you suspect, it would simply make the prospect of being warm in bed so overwhelmingly attractive that sleep would be the only logical escape. You look at the pitcher of water sitting in the basin. It has been there since the evening, and by now it has reached the ambient temperature of the unheated room, which is to say it is shockingly cold. Your doctor's instructions were very specific. You are not to splash your face gently. You are to perform a brisk, full-body ablution. You pour some of the water into the basin. It lands with a hollow splash that echoes in the quiet house. Taking a deep breath, you dip a coarse linen washcloth into the icy water. It comes out heavy and dripping. The first touch of the cloth to your arm is a genuine heart-stopping shock. It's so cold it feels hot, like a burn. Your entire body tenses, and you let out a small, involuntary gasp. You force yourself to continue, scrubbing your arms, your neck, your shoulders, your chest. Every swipe of the cloth is a fresh assault, a new wave of bone-deep cold. This is not the gentle, spa-like experience the hydrotherapy pamphlets depict, with serene women in Grecian robes standing by placid pools. This is a gritty, teeth-chattering ordeal in a dark, cold room. Historians still argue whether the benefits of hydrotherapy came from the physiological shock itself, or from the powerful placebo effect of undergoing such a dramatic and uncomfortable ritual. When a treatment is this unpleasant, you can't help but believe it must be doing something. As you continue your grim task, you recall reading about the more extreme forms of this cure. At fashionable hydrotherapy spas in places like Malvern, patients were subjected to a bewildering array of treatments. There was the Neptune's girdle, a wet sheet wrapped tightly around the midsection and left on all night. There was the dripping sheet, where the patient stood, shivering, while a sheet soaked in cold water was draped over them. And for the truly stubborn cases, there was the plunge bath, a full immersion in frigid water, sometimes for several minutes. Compared to that, your chilly sponge down in the washroom feels almost merciful. A particularly quirky and less common variation of this was the head bath, where only the patient's head was repeatedly doused with cold water, the theory being that it would directly cool an overheated or congested brain, which was believed to be the root cause of insomnia. The image of someone sitting in the dark pouring pitchers of icy water over their own head strikes you as both ludicrous and strangely compelling. You are now shivering uncontrollably, your teeth chattering a frantic rhythm against each other. Your skin is a patchwork of red and white and covered in goosebumps. You've done it. You have successfully administered the cure. You quickly, almost violently, dry yourself with a rough towel, the friction doing little to restore any warmth. Your nightgown feels thin and useless as you put it back on, the damp chill of your skin seeming to radiate right through the fabric. The journey back to your bedroom is a hurried, shivering retreat. You don't bother with the candle, navigating by memory through the familiar darkness, driven by the singular, overwhelming desire for warmth. You dive back into bed, pulling the mountain of blankets up to your chin. The sheets feel shockingly cold against your frigid skin at first, another layer of torment. But then slowly, miraculously, the trapped heat begins to work. The shivering subsides, replaced by a deep, profound sense of physical calm. Your body, having endured the acute stress of the cold, is now sinking into a state of deep relaxation. The blood is humming in your veins. The nagging aches are gone, replaced by a simple, overwhelming sense of creaturely comfort. Your doctor was right. The shock did something. You feel heavy. Your limbs are leaden. The overstuffed, lumpy mattress suddenly feels like the most luxurious, welcoming surface on earth. The velvet canopy of the bed is no longer a stuffy trap, but a cozy, protective tent. Your mind, which was racing just a few minutes ago, is now quiet. It has been silenced, it seems, by the sheer, undeniable reality of your chattering teeth and goose-pimpled skin. As you lie there, cocooned in the deep, dark warmth of your bed, the world outside fades away. The clock on the mantelpiece can chime all at once. You won't hear it. You drift in a shallow, restless state that isn't quite sleep, but is no longer true wakefulness. The intense chill from the water cure has subsided, leaving a heavy, leaden feeling in your limbs. But peace of mind remains elusive. Images from the day flicker behind your eyelids, a conversation replayed, a sideways glance from a neighbor re-examined. The silence of the house presses in, and you find yourself listening to your own heartbeat, a slow, muffled drum in the darkness. The hydrotherapy was a temporary distraction, a physical shock that is now worn off, leaving your relentlessly active mind back in charge. With a familiar sigh of defeat, you sit up and reach for the small, cluttered drawer of your bedside table. The drawer slides open with a soft, woody groan. Inside, amongst a tangle of ribbons, a mother-of-pearl button hook, and a few dried lavender sachets, is your small collection of bottles. These are your patent medicines, your tonics or elixirs, the last line of defense against the terrors of a sleepless night. In this era before stringent medical regulation, the marketplace is flooded with these proprietary remedies. Their labels, printed in florid, confident script, promise miraculous cures for a dizzying array of ailments, from consumption to weak nerves, from baldness to a poor complexion, and of course for insomnia. You pick up a small dark green bottle. The paper label is adorned with an image of a peacefully sleeping cherub, its head resting on a fluffy cloud. In elegant gold lettering, it reads, "Mrs. Winslow's Soothing Syrup." Though primarily marketed for teething children, a fact you'd try to ignore, it is widely and discreetly used by adults for nerves, anxiety, and sleeplessness. The advertisements in the newspapers and magazines call it a perfect godsend, a simple, harmless preparation of purely vegetable origin. You uncork the bottle. The smell is sweet and slightly medicinal with a hint of anise. You pour a small measure into the silver spoon that lives in the drawer for this very purpose and take the dose. The syrup is thick, cloyingly sweet, and it coats your tongue. You have no idea what's in it, really. The manufacturers guard their secret formulas jealously. But you know from experience that it often works. The active ingredient, of course, is morphine. Mrs. Winslow's Soothing Syrup is a potent, unregulated cocktail of morphine sulfate and alcohol. It's a mainstream and entirely respectable remedy, found in the medicine cabinets of millions of homes, including that of Queen Victoria herself, who is said to be a frequent user. You, like countless others, are simply a tired person using a readily available product to find a bit of peace. You are not a drug fiend, you are a patient. You place the bottle back in the drawer, your fingers brushing against another, larger one. This one is Dr. Barton's celebrated brown mixture. Its label promises to soothe coughs and calm the entire respiratory system, which, in the logic of the day, is closely linked to the nervous system. A calm chest, a calm mind. This one contains a different secret ingredient, opium, often in the form of a tincture. The line between a cough suppressant, a pain reliever, and a sleeping draught is wonderfully and dangerously blurry. Historians debate the extent to which Victorians understood the addictive nature of these remedies. While the concept of opium eating as a decadent, ruinous vice was well known, the habitual medicinal use of opiate-laced syrups was seen as something entirely different. It was domesticated, sanitized, and sold with the reassuring image of a kindly, gray-haired doctor or a beatific mother. It was medicine, not a vice. Therefore, your moderate use of it is not a weakness, but a sensible part of managing your own health. As you lie back against the propped-up pillows, waiting for Mrs. Winslow's magic to begin, you remember a truly quirky and slightly terrifying product you once saw advertised: a medicated pillow. It was a normal-looking pillow, but its stuffing was impregnated with a soporific compound. The user would inhale the gentle, sleep-inducing vapors all night long. The advertisement didn't specify the compound, but given the popular ingredients of the day, you can only imagine it was a mixture of chloroform, ether, or some other volatile narcotic. The idea of slowly anesthetizing yourself over the course of 8 hours seems less like a gentle remedy and more like a dress rehearsal for the afterlife. A pleasant, warm lethargy begins to spread through your body, starting from your stomach and radiating outward. It's a different feeling from the exhaustion brought on by the cold water. This is a soft, fuzzy-edged warmth, a gentle chemical blanket. Your racing thoughts begin to slow, their sharp edges blurring. The anxieties that seemed so monumental just a few minutes ago now feel distant and unimportant, as if they belong to someone else. The ticking of the clock on the mantelpiece is no longer a stern judgment, but a soft, rhythmic lullaby. The darkness behind your closed eyelids is no longer a blank screen for your worries, but a deep, welcoming velvet. This is the promised land. This is the peace you've been seeking. The sweet, deceptive magic of Mrs. Winslow's syrup is taking hold, gently unhitching your mind from the moorings of consciousness. You are floating now, drifting on a calm, syrupy sea. Your breathing becomes deeper, slower. The faint ache from the corset is gone. The memory of the icy water is a distant dream. The house is silent, and for the first time in many hours, so is your mind. You sink into the horsehair mattress, into the profound and dreamless sleep bought and paid for in a small dark green bottle. The sleep is deep, but it's a heavy, dreamless state, a chemical void rather than a restorative rest. You wake hours later, not to the gentle light of dawn, but to a suffocating stuffiness. The air in your curtained-off bed is thick and stale, clinging to you like a damp shroud. A dull headache pulses at your temples, a common souvenir from a night spent with Mrs. Winslow's syrup. The clock chimes 4. You are awake again, and the night is far from over. The problem now isn't a racing mind, but a profound sense of physical discomfort. The air feels unbreathable. Driven by a desperate need for freshness, you push back the heavy velvet curtains of the bed and swing your legs to the floor. The cold wood is a welcome shock. Your first instinct is to go to the window, to throw open the sash and let in a rush of cool, clean night air, but you stop yourself, your hand hovering over the latch. You had been warned your entire life about the terrible dangers of the night air. This wasn't just a quaint superstition, it was a widely accepted medical theory known as the miasma theory. For most of the 19th century, it was believed that diseases like cholera, chlamydia, and the Black Death were caused by a miasma, a noxious form of bad air filled with invisible, disease-carrying particles from decomposing organic matter. And this miasma was thought to be particularly potent and dangerous at night. To open your window after dark, especially in a city, was to invite sickness, decay, and even death itself into your home. It was the Victorian equivalent of leaving your front door unlocked in a bad neighborhood. So you find yourself in a paradox. Your body craves fresh air, but your mind, steeped in the medical wisdom of the day, is terrified of it. You stand by the window, peering through the slight distortion of the old glass. Outside, the street is empty, bathed in the eerie yellow glow of the gas street lamps. You can see the dark shapes of the buildings opposite, the faint outline of a sleeping horse still harnessed to a cart down the street. It looks peaceful, but you know it's a lie. Out there, in that seemingly tranquil air, lurks the miasma, the invisible fog of pestilence. At the same time, you are equally afraid of stagnant, unventilated air indoors. This was the great Victorian obsession with ventilation. Public buildings, hospitals, and even private homes were being designed with complex and often comically ineffective systems of vents, flues, and air bricks. The idea was to keep the air moving at all times, flushing out the vitiated air, the air corrupted by human breath, sweat, and the fumes from gas lighting and coal fires, and replacing it with fresh, wholesome air. The conflict between these two fears, the fear of the outdoor miasma and the fear of indoor vitiated air, created a constant, low-grade anxiety about the very act of breathing. Historians see this obsession as a reflection of the anxieties of a newly urbanized society, grappling with pollution, overcrowding, and epidemic disease, long before the germ theory provided a clear enemy to fight. You compromise. Instead of opening the window, you crack open your bedroom door. You then move to the small grate of the fireplace. Even though the fire is out, the chimney provides a steady, albeit gentle, draft, pulling the stale air from the room. This is the approved method, creating a gentle, constant circulation without letting in a direct blast of the treacherous night air. You stand in the middle of the room, wrapped in your shawl, trying to feel the subtle shift in the atmosphere. The air does begin to feel a little lighter, the stuffiness slowly receding. It's a small victory. As you stand there, you remember a quirky architectural feature you saw in a new modern house being built down the street, a Sheringham valve. It was a small hinged iron vent installed near the ceiling. It could be opened with a cord, and it was designed with a slanted flap that would direct the incoming fresh air upwards towards the ceiling. The theory was that the cold, dangerous outside air would then mix with the warmer air of the room before descending, thus being tempered and made safe before the occupants breathed it. It was a classic piece of Victorian engineering, overly complicated, slightly paranoid, and born of a deep-seated terror of the natural world. The gentle movement of air begins to soothe you. It's not the bracing gust you craved, but it's something. The remnants of the morphine syrup are still clinging to your system, making you feel slow and detached. The headache is a dull, persistent companion. You think about the poor, especially those living in the crowded tenements of the East End, where a dozen people might sleep in a single, unventilated room. For them, the fear of miasma wasn't a theoretical concern. It was a daily reality, intertwined with the very real smells of sewage, industrial waste, and human suffering. Your own carefully managed airflow in your spacious middle-class bedroom suddenly feels like an incredible luxury. You return to the bed, but this time you leave the velvet curtains slightly parted, creating a small gap for the circulating air to enter your personal breathing space. It's a tiny act of defiance against the oppressive stuffiness. You lie down, pulling the covers up, and focus on the sensation of the slightly cooler, fresher air on your face. It feels clean. It feels hopeful. You are still awake, still trapped in the long, dark tunnel of the night, but now at least you can breathe. And in the oppressive quiet of the Victorian night, that small comfort is enough to bring a fragile, fleeting sense of peace. The slightly improved air quality in your velvet curtain sanctuary helps, but it's not a cure. The dull, narcotic-induced headache persists, and your body feels heavy and unrested. You are simply too aware of yourself lying in the dark, of the weight of the blankets, the texture of the linen sheets, the faint, persistent ticking of the clock. Sleep, you realize, isn't just about a quiet mind or a tired body, it's about distraction. It's about finding a sensation so gentle and monotonous that it lulls the conscious mind into surrendering its grip. Your gaze drifts to the corner of the room where a peculiar object stands in the shadows. It's a recent and rather expensive purchase bought in a fit of optimistic desperation from a catalog that specialized in modern scientific conveniences. It is a mechanical sleeping aid. Specifically, it's a rocking bed, a cumbersome contraption of polished mahogany and gleaming brass gears. The entire bed frame is mounted on a set of curved rockers, connected by a long lever to a clockwork mechanism housed in a handsome wooden pace on the floor. The idea, as the catalog so enthusiastically explained, is to replicate the soothing, somnolent motion of a cradle, but for a fully grown, nerve-frazzled adult. With a surge of what feels like your last reserve of energy, you get out of your own bed and cross the room. The clockwork mechanism needs to be wound. You pick up a large brass key and fit it into the socket. The winding is a stiff, laborious process, a series of loud, metallic clicks and groans that seem shockingly intrusive in the dead of night. It feels less like preparing for a gentle slumber and more like winding up a medieval siege engine. Fully wound, the catalog promises 2 full hours of gentle, continuous oscillation. You climb onto the rocking bed. The mattress is just as lumpy and unyielding as your own, but the novelty of the situation is a welcome distraction. You find the release lever and pull it. With a soft whirring sound from the clockwork motor, the bed begins to move. It's a slow, deliberate side-to-side rock, a gentle, rhythmic sway. Squeak, creak, squeak, creak. The motion is surprisingly smooth, a testament to Victorian engineering and a generous application of lubricating oil. You lie back, close your eyes, and try to give yourself over to the sensation. The constant, predictable motion is interesting. It's not unpleasant. You can feel a gentle pull of inertia as the bed reaches the peak of its arc and begins its descent in the other direction. This was the height of sleep science in your era. Proponents argued that this gentle agitation of the body's humors and the slight sloshing of the blood in the brain was the perfect antidote to the mental stagnation that caused insomnia. It was, in essence, an attempt to physically rock your overactive brain into a state of quiet submission. Historians still debate whether these mechanical aids offered any real physiological benefit, or if their success was purely psychological. The simple act of engaging in such a novel and elaborate ritual could, in itself, be a powerful enough distraction to enable sleep. It's the mechanical version of counting sheep, only the sheep is a 4-poster bed, and you're riding on its back. The rocking is steady, monotonous. Squeak, creak, squeak, creak. It is, you have to admit, a little bit soothing. The repetitive sound becomes a kind of white noise, masking the smaller, more irritating sounds of the house. The motion is a constant, gentle sensory input that prevents your mind from latching on to anxious thoughts. You think about the other inventions you saw in that same catalog. There was the anemoi, a device that used a clockwork-powered fan to blow a continuous, gentle stream of cool air over the sleeper's face. The advertisement featured a drawing of a man sleeping with a beatific smile, his hair gently rustling in the artificial breeze. A far quirkier and slightly more alarming invention was the somnambulist's safety guard. It wasn't designed to help you sleep, but to protect you while you did. It was a complex harness you wore in bed, tethered to an alarm bell. If you got up to sleepwalk, the tether would pull taut and ring the bell, waking the entire household. It speaks volumes about an era when the anxieties of the sleeping mind were considered a problem to be solved with ropes and bells. The rocking continues its steady rhythmic dance. Squeak, creak, squeak, creak. A strange sense of detachment comes over you. You are no longer a person lying awake in a bed. You are a passenger on a slow, gentle voyage to nowhere. The motion is becoming hypnotic. Your headache seems to be receding, or perhaps you're just not paying attention to it anymore. The heavy lethargy from the soothing syrup has transformed into a more natural feeling weariness. Your eyelids feel heavy. The darkness behind them feels deeper, more inviting. The relentless, mechanical predictability of the motion is the key. It gives your brain something simple and repetitive to focus on, a single boring task that requires no effort and has no emotional weight. The clockwork gears whir softly. The wooden frame groans its gentle, rhythmic complaint. You are slowly, but surely, being rocked into a state of surrender. The machine is doing the work for you, gently nudging you toward the edge of consciousness. You don't notice the exact moment it happens, but at some point between one creak and the next, the rhythmic rocking carries you over the threshold, and you are finally, truly, asleep. The gentle clockwork rocking carries you into a deeper slumber than you've had all night. But mechanical contrivances have their limits. An hour or so later, the spring-wound mechanism slowly whirs to a halt. The rhythmic creaking fades, the motion ceases, and the sudden, profound stillness of the room jolts you back to a state of hazy half-awareness. You're lying in the dark, the faint moonlight now filtering through the window, and you are thirsty. A deep, parched, bone-dry thirst. It's a side effect of last night's chemical sleep aid, a nagging, unpleasant reminder of your earlier desperation. With a groan, you slide off the stationary rocking bed and make your way to the washstand. You pour a glass of water from the pitcher. It's lukewarm and tastes slightly of ceramic, but it's the most satisfying thing you can imagine right now. You drink it down in 3 long gulps. As you stand there, in the pre-dawn gloom, your mind slowly drifts back to clarity, and you find yourself thinking not of mechanical beds or cold water, but of the other bottle, the one you use only sparingly, the one that always, without fail, works. It's kept not in your bedside table with the sweet, socially acceptable syrups, but in the locked mahogany medicine cabinet in the corner of the room. This small cabinet is the family's domestic pharmacy, containing everything from smelling salts and carbolic acid for cleaning wounds to castor oil and quinine. You retrieve the small brass key from a hidden hook behind the dresser and unlock the cabinet. The door opens with a soft click, releasing a concentrated wave of medicinal smells, camphor, wintergreen, and something else, something earthy and acrid. There, on the middle shelf, is the small, dark blue glass bottle, instantly recognizable by its ribbed texture, a design feature mandated by law to warn people, even in the dark, that the contents were poison. The label is simple, printed by the local chemist. Laudanum. Beneath it, in smaller letters, tincture of opium. Laudanum is not some fringe, illicit substance. It is, perhaps, the single most common and widely used medicine of the entire 19th century. It is the Victorian era's aspirin, its Prozac, its Ambien, all rolled into one. You use it for headaches, for coughs, for menstrual cramps, for diarrhea, for general melancholy, and of course, for nights like this. Your own doctor has prescribed it to you, advising a dose of 10 to 12 drops as needed for nervous agitation. Everyone uses it, from the highest aristocrat to the lowest laborer, from artists and poets like Coleridge and De Quincey to respectable housewives like yourself. It is a universal panacea. You carefully take the bottle and the small dropper that rests beside it. You pour a fresh glass of water. Holding the dropper steady, you count out 10 drops into the glass. Each drop is a tiny, brownish pearl that dissolves into a swirling cloud. You watch it dissipate, the water turning a faint, pale brown. There is a ritual to this that is both calming and deeply ingrained. The counting of the drops, the swirl in the glass, it's a familiar, almost comforting routine. As you stand there, glass in hand, you think about the strange duality of this substance. On the one hand, it is a respectable, workaday medicine, a household staple. On the other, the horrors of the opium dens in London's East End are the subject of sensational newspaper articles and cautionary sermons. This created a profound class and racial dimension to the perception of the drug. The solitary middle-class woman sipping her laudanum in water for her nerves was seen as a patient engaged in self-care. The working-class man, or the Chinese immigrant, smoking opium in a crowded den was seen as a degenerate indulging in a dangerous foreign vice. Historians often point to this hypocrisy as a key feature of Victorian society's complex relationship with narcotics. You are simply taking your medicine. They are ruining themselves. You drink the water. The taste is incredibly bitter, a deep, earthy bitterness that coats your entire mouth and throat. It's the taste of the poppy, raw and undisguised. It's the taste you associate not with pleasure, but with relief, with the promise of silence. You remember reading a quirky and rather sad domestic tip in a lady's journal. It suggested adding a few drops of laudanum to the water used to boil fish, to calm the fish and prevent it from thrashing about in the pot, which was thought to toughen the meat. This casual, almost comical use of a powerful narcotic speaks volumes about how deeply integrated it was into the fabric of daily life. It was a tool, like soap or salt, to be used to manage the small inconveniences of the world. You rinse the glass and lock the bottle back in its cabinet, returning the key to its hiding place. You get back into your own bed this time, the proper bed, and lie back against the pillows. The effects are much quicker than the gentle syrup. Within minutes, the bitterness in your mouth is replaced by a spreading wave of profound tranquility. It's not a fuzzy warmth like the morphine syrup. It's a cool, serene detachment. The nagging thirst is gone. The dull headache vanishes. The anxieties you'd been wrestling with all night don't just recede, they evaporate. They simply cease to have any meaning. The world outside your mind shrinks, its sharp edges dissolving into a soft, blurry haze. You feel a sense of well-being so complete it feels almost holy. This, you think, is what peace feels like. It's the silencing of all the noise, both inside and out. The first pale gray light of dawn is beginning to filter through the gap in the window curtains, but it doesn't matter. Your night is just beginning. You close your eyes and the world dissolves. Laudanum has kept its promise. The laudanum provides not so much a sleep as a deep, profound oblivion. You surface hours later, feeling groggy and disconnected, as if returning from a long journey to a foreign land. The sun is now fully up, casting bright, intrusive stripes of light across the floor. Your mouth is dry again, and a familiar sense of weary resignation settles over you. The drugs, the machines, the cold water, they are all just temporary fixes, skirmishes in a war you never seem to win. Last week, in a moment of sheer desperation, you decided to try something entirely different, something unconventional. After a discreet inquiry, you obtained the address of a man who practiced not medicine, but a new and controversial art that straddled the line between science, theater, and mysticism. He was a mesmerist, and your appointment is this afternoon. Later that day, you find yourself sitting in a dimly lit, overstuffed drawing room in a respectable but not quite fashionable part of town. The air is heavy with the scent of sandalwood incense and old velvet. Your host, a Mr. Finch, is not the wild-eyed charlatan you half expected. He is a mild-mannered, middle-aged man with kind eyes, a soft, soothing voice, and an air of academic seriousness. He explains that your sleeplessness is a result of a blockage or imbalance in your animal magnetism, an invisible, vital fluid that flows through all living things. His task is simply to help redirect and rebalance this fluid using his own, more powerfully charged magnetism. You sit in a comfortable armchair, and he sits opposite you, his knees almost touching yours. He asks you to relax, to empty your mind, and to stare into his eyes. His gaze is steady, unwavering, but not uncomfortable. Then he begins to make the mesmeric passes. He holds his hands, palms down, a few inches above your head, and slowly, deliberately, draws them down the length of your body, without ever touching you. He moves his hands down your arms, over your torso, along your legs, all the way to your feet, where he flicks his wrists as if casting off some invisible residue. Then he begins again. The process is silent, deeply strange, and surprisingly relaxing. The slow, repetitive motion is hypnotic. His intense focus is palpable. You can feel a faint warmth, or perhaps just a change in air pressure as his hands pass over you. Is this the animal magnetism, or is it just your own heightened senses playing tricks on you in the incense-filled room? Mesmerism, also known as animal magnetism, occupied a strange and liminal space in Victorian society. It was championed by some doctors and intellectuals as a powerful new therapeutic tool, a key to unlocking the mysteries of the mind and body. At the same time, it was widely condemned by the medical establishment and the church as a dangerous quackery, a theatrical fraud that preyed on the gullible, especially impressionable women. Public demonstrations were popular, often involving dramatic displays where subjects would fall into trances, exhibit strange paralyses, or even undergo surgery, apparently without pain. Mr. Finch continues his slow, rhythmic passes. He doesn't speak. The only sounds are the ticking of a clock and the distant rumble of carriage wheels on the street outside. You feel your eyelids growing heavy. Your breathing deepens. A pleasant lethargy, not unlike the feeling from the laudanum, but without the bitter taste and the fuzzy edges, spreads through your limbs. You are not falling asleep, but you are sinking into a state of profound relaxation unlike any you have ever experienced. Your mind, usually a hive of activity, is quiet and still. You recall reading about a particularly quirky fringe application of mesmerism, mesmeric horticulture. Some enthusiasts claimed they could use mesmeric passes to encourage plants to grow faster and produce more vibrant flowers. They would spend hours a day making slow, deliberate hand gestures over their potted ferns and geraniums, convinced their vital fluid was nourishing the flora. The idea seems utterly bizarre, but sitting here now, feeling this strange, calming energy, you're not so sure it's impossible. Historians still argue about what was actually happening in these mesmeric sessions. Was it a genuine, undiscovered biomagnetic force, as its practitioners claimed? Was it a form of hypnotism, tapping into the power of suggestion? Or was it simply a masterful piece of psychological theater, where the combination of a charismatic operator, a willing subject, and a ritualized, mysterious process created a powerful placebo effect? Mr. Finch now changes his technique. He holds his fingertips together and points them directly at your forehead, holding them there, motionless, for several long minutes. You can feel a strange tingling sensation between your eyebrows. It's not unpleasant. He then begins to speak, his voice a low, soothing murmur. He tells you that your vital fluid is now balanced. He tells you that the blockages have been cleared. He tells you that tonight you will sleep a deep, natural, and restorative sleep. You will welcome the night. You will find peace. The session lasts for nearly an hour. When it's over, he gently brings you back to full awareness. You feel calm, clear-headed, and strangely optimistic. You pay his fee, and not insignificant sum, and step back out into the bustling afternoon street. The city seems louder, brighter, more vivid than before. You feel a lightness in your step, a sense of hope that has been absent for a long time. You don't know what happened in that dim, quiet room. You don't know if it was science, suggestion, or pure humbug. But as you walk home, you find yourself believing, for the first time in a long while, that maybe, just maybe, he was right. That evening, you feel a flicker of something unfamiliar, anticipation. The calm, centered feeling from your session with Mr. Finch lingers. You perform your nightly rituals, brushing your hair, changing into your nightgown with a deliberate, mindful slowness you haven't felt before. You even forego your usual preventative dose of a soothing syrup, determined to give the mesmeric cure a fair chance to work its settled magic. You get into bed. The linen sheets cool against your skin. The room is dark and quiet, but as the minutes stretch into an hour and then another, a familiar, sinking feeling returns. The optimism begins to curdle into the old restless anxiety. Your mind, so quiet this afternoon, is beginning to wake up, re-engaging with its favorite nocturnal pastime, worrying. You think about an unpaid bill. You reread a letter in your mind, agonizing over its tone. You plan the menu for a dinner party 2 weeks from now. Every thought is a small, sharp stone, and your mind is a restless hand, picking them up, examining them, and turning them over and over. The mesmerist's peace has evaporated. What went wrong? You begin to fixate on the day's activities, searching for a culprit. And then you remember. After your session with Mr. Finch, You spent 2 hours reading a thrilling new novel, a serialized adventure story full of dramatic reversals of fortune, daring escapes, and intense, passionate dialogue. At the time, it was a wonderful distraction. Now you're convinced it was a terrible mistake. You are a victim of brain work. This was a pervasive and deeply felt anxiety in the latter half of the 19th century. As literacy rates rose and the pace of professional and intellectual life quickened, a new set of ailments, collectively known as neurasthenia or nervous exhaustion, seemed to be on the rise. And the primary cause, according to many doctors and social commentators, was the dangerous overstimulation of the modern mind. The brain was seen as a kind of factory or telegraph office with a finite amount of energy. If you used too much of that energy during the day on intense thinking, reading, or emotional excitement, you would have none left for the vital, restorative work of sleep. Your brain, in essence, would be too tired to rest. This fear applied to men in the professions, lawyers, doctors, businessmen, who were thought to be literally thinking themselves to death, but it was applied with even greater force to women. The female brain, it was widely believed, was a more delicate, sensitive instrument, ill-suited to the rigors of sustained intellectual effort. Reading sensational novels, engaging in political debate, or pursuing higher education were all seen as profoundly dangerous activities that could lead to hysteria, reproductive problems, and, of course, chronic insomnia. You lie in bed, berating yourself for your poor judgment. That novel, with its cliffhangers and emotional turmoil, has clearly overexcited your cerebral matter. Your brain is now congested with blood and electrical energy, a frenzied, overstimulated engine that cannot be shut down. This mainstream medical theory perfectly captured the era's anxieties about modernity, gender roles, and the perceived fragility of the middle-class constitution. You try to actively calm your mind, to think of boring things. You picture a blank wall. You try to count backwards from 100, but your mind keeps inserting characters from the novel into the sequence. 87. What if the heroine had just listened to her father? 86. Historians often see the diagnosis of neurasthenia as a way for patients to legitimize their feelings of anxiety and depression in a society that often dismissed such complaints as moral weakness. Having brain fag was a medically sanctioned condition, a sign that you were a sensitive, intelligent person, struggling with the overwhelming demands of the modern world. It was a diagnosis that conferred a strange kind of status. You recall reading a particularly quirky extension of this theory, the danger of sleeping on your back. It was believed that this position allowed too much blood to pool at the base of the skull, leading to an overstimulation of the cerebellum and causing nightmares and unwholesome dreams. The recommended sleeping posture was on the right side to give the heart more room and to ensure proper cerebral drainage. You dutifully turn onto your right side, as if aligning your body with a magnetic pole. The house is quiet. The city outside is settling into its deepest slumber. And here you are, a prisoner of your own overstimulated intellect. The irony is bitter. You sought distraction, and that very distraction has become the source of your torment. The problem, it seems, isn't a lack of sleepiness, but an excess of wakefulness. Your brain is simply too engaged with the world, too full of stories and ideas and worries, to retreat into the necessary blankness of sleep. Mr. Finch's magnetic fluid stood no chance against the raw power of a well-plotted novel. As you lie there, on your medically approved right side, you make a solemn vow. Tomorrow, no more excitement. Tomorrow, you will dedicate yourself to the pursuit of profound, unshakable boredom. The morning arrives pale and gray after another night of fractured, unsatisfying sleep. You rise feeling not refreshed, but defeated, the memory of last night's racing thoughts still clinging to you like a fever. Today you resolve will be different. You are abandoning the modern and the mystical. No more chemicals, no more machines, no more mesmerists. You are returning to the oldest remedies, to the quiet, unassuming wisdom of the garden and the field. You are going to embrace the gentle herbal path to slumber. After a bland breakfast, a piece of dry toast, and a cup of weak tea, nothing to excite the nerves, you head to the local apothecary. It's a dark, narrow shop that smells of dried herbs, beeswax, and something sharp and chemical that catches in the back of your throat. Wooden drawers with small porcelain labels line the walls from floor to ceiling, containing substances from every corner of the British Empire: chamomile from Egypt, valerian root from Europe, cloves from the Spice Islands. This is the older, slower medicine, the medicine that has been practiced for centuries, long before the invention of Mrs. Winslow's syrup. You speak with the apothecary, a frail, elderly man with ink-stained fingers and spectacles perched on the end of his nose. You explain your troubles, carefully editing out your more exotic experiments with rocking beds and mesmerism. You just need something to soothe the nerves and encourage a natural sleep. He nods slowly, a man who has heard this story 1,000 times. He doesn't recommend a tincture of opium. Instead, he shuffles to a set of drawers at the back of the shop and begins to measure out ingredients on a small brass scale. He gives you a small bag of dried chamomile flowers, instructing you to brew a strong infusion an hour before bed. The classic remedy, he says with a faint smile. Simple, but effective. He then sells you a small bottle of lavender water, recommending you sprinkle it on your pillowcase to create a calming atmosphere. Finally, he brings out his most prized recommendation. He presents you with a small, flat pillow, about the size of a book. It's made of simple muslin and feels crisp and fragrant. A hops pillow, he announces proudly. The pillow is stuffed not with feathers, but with dried hops, the same flowers used to brew beer. For centuries, it had been a piece of folk wisdom that the soporific, sedative qualities of hops could be inhaled throughout the night, producing a gentle, natural sleep. It was famously used by King George III to help soothe his own nervous agitation. You purchase your small collection of herbal remedies and return home feeling a sense of grounded, practical hope. There is something reassuring about these treatments. They are not secret, proprietary formulas in mysterious bottles, but simple, recognizable plants. Their effects are mild, their history long. This feels like a responsible, wholesome approach to your problem. That evening, you prepare for bed with a new sense of ritual. You brew the chamomile tea in your favorite porcelain cup. The steam rises, carrying the sweet, apple-like fragrance of the flowers. The taste is gentle, slightly bitter, and warming. As you sip it, Sitting in a comfortable chair away from the bed, you feel a subtle relaxation spreading through your body. It's not a powerful chemical wave of lethargy, but a soft, gradual unwinding of tension. Next, you prepare the bed. You sprinkle a few drops of the lavender water onto your pillows. The sharp, clean, floral scent instantly fills the air, cutting through the usual stuffiness of the bedroom. The smell is calming, evocative of summer gardens and clean linen. It's a simple form of aromatherapy, a mainstream practice for creating a restful environment. You place the hops pillow next to your regular pillow, where you can rest your head near it and inhale its strange, green, slightly bitter aroma all night long. Historians often note this parallel track of medicine in the Victorian era. While industrial chemistry was producing powerful new narcotics and sedatives, traditional herbalism continued to thrive, often seen as a safer, more natural alternative for women and children. It represented a connection to an older, pastoral world, a comforting antidote to the smoke and stress of the modern city. As you get into bed, you recall a particularly quirky herbal remedy you once read in an old book of household tips, a lettuce poultice. The instructions were to boil several heads of lettuce down to a soft, mushy pulp, then wrap the warm pulp in a cloth and apply it to the forehead. The mild sedative properties of wild lettuce were well known, and this was a direct, if rather messy, attempt to absorb them through the skin. The thought of going to sleep with a warm, wet bag of boiled lettuce strapped to your head makes you smile. Your hops pillow seems incredibly sophisticated by comparison. You lie down, your head on your lavender-scented pillow, close to the earthy, fragrant hops. The combination of smells is pleasant. A miniature herb garden right in your bed. You focus on your breathing, inhaling the calming scents, exhaling the day's anxieties. The chamomile tea has left a pleasant warmth in your stomach. There were no dramatic effects. Your mind doesn't simply shut off. The worries are still there, but they seem further away, their sharp edges softened. You feel comfortable. You feel at peace in your own bed, perhaps for the first time all week. The herbal remedies haven't knocked you out. They have simply invited you to sleep, gently and kindly. And as you drift into a light, natural slumber, you feel that you might just accept the invitation. The herbal remedies work their gentle magic. You drift into a natural, untroubled sleep, the scents of lavender and hops a fragrant anchor in the darkness. But the city is a restless beast, and its slumber is never absolute. Around 3 in the morning, you are pulled abruptly from your dreams by a sudden, jarring noise from the street below. It's the sharp, metallic clatter of a horseshoe on cobblestone, followed by a man's low, indistinct shouting. A late-night traveler, perhaps, or a cart driver making an early start. The moment of peace is shattered. You are instantly, completely awake. And now that you are listening, you become aware of the city's nocturnal symphony, a soundscape utterly different from the familiar drone of the day. The pre-electrical city at night is not silent. It is a landscape of profound quiet, punctuated by sudden, sharp, and often unidentifiable noises. You lie perfectly still, your ears straining in the darkness. The loudest and most constant sound is the wind, whistling through the narrow gaps in your window frame, a low, mournful moan. It carries with it the distant, pervasive smell of coal smoke that hangs over the city like a permanent fog, even at this hour. Then another sound, the slow, heavy tread of the night watchman on his rounds, his footsteps echoing on the stone pavement. You hear the rhythmic tap of his staff on the ground, a reassuring sound that means order is being kept, but also a stark reminder that the night holds dangers that require watching. Suddenly, a dog begins to bark, a frantic, furious sound a few streets over. It's answered by another, and then another, a chain reaction of canine alarm spreading through the neighborhood. What set them off? A stray cat? A prowler? You'll never know. The barking continues for a few minutes, a raw, aggressive sound in the otherwise still night before eventually dying down, leaving the silence feeling deeper and more fragile than before. This sensory environment is a world away from the steady, predictable white noise of the 21st century. There is no gentle hum of a refrigerator, no distant drone of traffic on a freeway. The quiet is so absolute that any sudden sound is magnified, made startling and significant by the stillness surrounding it. This is a key aspect of the Victorian sleep experience that is often overlooked. The quality of silence was different. It was thinner, more easily broken. You hear the distant chime of a church bell, tolling the half hour. The sound travels for miles in the cool, dense night air, a lonely metallic note that marks the slow, empty passage of time. It's a sound meant to comfort, a reminder of God's presence even in the darkness. But tonight, it just feels like a measure of your own wakefulness. Historians who study the history of the senses often debate how people in the past experienced the world differently. Did the lack of constant background noise make them more sensitive to sound? Or did they simply learn to filter out these sudden, sharp interruptions as a normal part of life? Lying here, you feel intensely sensitive. Every creak of your own house settling, every distant shout, every gust of wind feels like a direct address, a personal intrusion on your peace. A particularly strange and unsettling urban sound you've sometimes heard is the cry of the tosher. These are the men who scavenge the city's vast sewer systems at low tide, searching for coins, lost jewelry, or anything of value that has been washed away. Their cries, echoing up from the grates in the street, are distorted and ghostly, a voice from the city's hidden underworld. You haven't heard one tonight, but the memory of the sound is enough to send a small shiver down your spine. It's a reminder of the other city, the one that works and suffers and scavenges while you are meant to be sleeping safely in your bed. Then comes the clatter of wheels again, closer this time. It's the slow, heavy rumble of the night soil cart making its rounds. This is the essential but deeply unpleasant work of collecting the city's human waste from privies and cesspits under the cover of darkness. The cart groans and rattles its way down the street, accompanied by the low calls of the workers and a faint but unmistakable odor that briefly taints the night air. It's a visceral, multi-sensory intrusion, a reminder of the raw, unsanitized realities of urban life that the daylight hours try so hard to conceal. You pull the covers up higher, as if you could block out the sounds and smells of the world outside. The herbal calm has been completely undone. Your nervous system, lulled to sleep by chamomile and hops, has been shocked back into high alert by this series of unpredictable auditory assaults. The city, it seems, is as restless as you are. It sighs and groans and shouts in its sleep, and you are forced to lie awake and listen to its troubled dreams. The peace of the garden is no match for the raw, chaotic energy of the street. The city's nocturnal symphony finally fades, leaving you in a state of quiet agitation. The interruption was fatal. The gentle, herb-induced sleep is gone, and the gates of slumber seem firmly locked once more. You lie in the gray pre-dawn light, a veteran of another lost night, feeling a familiar blend of exhaustion and frustration. Your medicine cabinet, with its dependable bottle of laudanum, beckons, but you hesitate. The papers have been full of stories lately about opium addiction, of laudanum slaves who cannot escape its clutches. A seed of modern scientific fear has been planted. It is this fear that has led to the promotion of a new generation of sleep aids, touted as scientific, non-habit-forming, and perfectly safe. Last week, after a particularly bad night, you consulted a new, younger doctor, a man with a brisk, modern attitude and a belief in the power of the laboratory. He listened to your complaints, dismissed the herbal remedies as old wives' tales, and sternly warned you of the dangers of opiate-based medicines. Then, with an air of presenting a miracle, he wrote you a prescription for a new wonder drug, chloral hydrate. The small bottle of clear, syrupy liquid is in your locked medicine cabinet, right next to the laudanum. You retrieve it. The label, written in the chemist's precise looping script, is simple: the draft, to be taken as directed. The doctor's instructions were to mix 1 spoonful with water. He assured you it was not a narcotic. It was a hypnotic, a new class of drug designed to produce a natural, refreshing sleep by gently depressing the central nervous system without the disorienting and addictive properties of opium. It was the future of medicine. With a sense of cautious optimism, you measure out a dose. It mixes with the water to create a slightly cloudy, oily liquid. You drink it quickly. The taste is acrid and unpleasant, with a chemical bitterness that is very different from the earthy taste of laudanum. It tastes of the laboratory, of science and progress. You get back into bed and wait for the promised miracle. Chloral hydrate was first synthesized in 1832, but it wasn't until the late 1660s that it was introduced into medical practice as a sedative and hypnotic. It was an immediate and massive success, hailed as the first truly safe and effective sleeping medicine. Doctors prescribed it enthusiastically for insomnia, anxiety, alcoholism, and even seasickness. It was considered a triumph of rational, scientific pharmacology over the crude, plant-based remedies of the past. It was, in short, the perfect drug for a forward-looking, science-obsessed age. As you lie there, you feel its effects begin to take hold. It's a different sensation from the other remedies. There's no gentle, fuzzy warmth like Mrs. Winslow's syrup, no serene detachment like laudanum. Instead, a profound, almost unnerving physical heaviness begins to creep into your limbs. Your arms and legs feel like lead. Your eyelids become almost impossible to keep open. It doesn't feel like you are being gently invited to sleep. It feels like you are being pulled under, a deep, powerful, and slightly frightening undertow. Your thoughts don't drift away, they simply stop, as if a switch has been thrown in your brain. The scientific consensus on chloral hydrate was, of course, tragically wrong. It turned out to be highly addictive, and overdoses, both accidental and intentional, were common. It was particularly dangerous when mixed with alcohol, a combination that became known as knockout drops or a Mickey Finn. But in these early years, that danger was largely unknown or deliberately downplayed by its proponents. Historians often view the rise of chloral hydrate as a cautionary tale about the rush to embrace new chemical solutions without a full understanding of their long-term consequences. A quirky and rather grim footnote in the story of chloral hydrate is its popularity among writers and artists. The poet Dante Gabriel Rossetti became a notorious addict, and it is widely believed that his erratic behavior and eventual death were caused by his massive consumption of the drug. It became the fashionable vice of the intellectual set, a cleaner alternative to the bohemian opium scene. The last thing you remember is the weight, an immense, crushing, but not unpleasant weight pressing you down into the mattress. It is the weight of science, of progress, of the modern world, and it is finally silencing your restless Victorian mind. The sleep it produces is immediate and absolute. It is a deep, black, dreamless abyss, a complete cessation of consciousness. There is no gentle transition, no pleasant drifting. One moment you are a weary insomniac lying in the pale morning light. The next you are gone. The miracle drug has worked. For now. You wake up feeling as though you've been dredged up from the bottom of a deep, dark well. The chloral hydrate sleep was profound, but it leaves behind a residue, a groggy chemical hangover that makes the world feel slightly out of focus. The sun is high in the sky, streaming through the window with an almost accusatory brightness. You've slept late, missing the morning, and yet you don't feel rested. You feel drugged. The scientific solution, you realize, comes with its own set of problems. That afternoon, feeling dull-witted and lethargic, you decide you need a new strategy altogether. The problem isn't your bed, your diet, or your nerves. The problem, as you concluded a few nights ago, is your overstimulated mind. The answer, therefore, is not to sedate the body, but to exhaust the brain, to bore it into submission. You need the ultimate Victorian sleep remedy, a truly, profoundly, soul-crushingly boring bedtime story. Your target is the bookshelf in the parlor. It's a handsome piece of furniture filled with leather-bound volumes, but you are not looking for thrilling novels or stimulating poetry. You are on a mission for literary anesthetic. You scan the titles, your fingers dusty from the spines. The Pilgrim's Progress. Too Much Peril. Sermons of the Reverend Cotter. Too Much Fire and Brimstone. A History of the Roman Emperors. Too Much Scandal. And then you see it. The perfect book. It's a thick, heavy volume bound in drab brown cloth. The title, embossed in faded gold lettering, reads, An Inquiry into the Principles of Domestic Drainage by a Mr. Alistair Finch, no relation, you hope, to the mesmerist. It's a treatise on sanitary engineering, published some 20 years ago. full of dense technical prose, complex diagrams of sewer pipes, and moralistic arguments about the importance of proper ventilation in the water closet. It is, by all accounts, a masterpiece of tedium. You pull it from the shelf. It feels heavy in your hands, weighted with the gravity of its own dullness. That evening, you prepare for bed with a sense of grim determination. You prop yourself up against the pillows, light a single candle by your bedside, and open the book. The print is small. The paragraphs are long, and the language is a dense thicket of technical jargon and convoluted Victorian syntax. The author begins with a lengthy 30-page preface on the moral and spiritual decay that inevitably results from improperly trapped sewer gas. The noxious effluvia, you read, insinuate themselves not only into the respiratory passages of the household's inhabitants, but into the very fabric of their moral character, breeding indolence, ill temper, and a lamentable disregard for punctuality. You read the sentence twice, trying to comprehend how a badly designed U-bend could lead to a disregard for punctuality. Your mind begins to feel fuzzy. This is promising. You turn the page and are confronted with a chapter on the ideal gradient for a subterranean waste pipe. The author argues with painstaking detail for a fall of no less than 1 in 48, but no more than 1 in 40, to ensure a self-scouring velocity of the effluent. He includes several pages of mathematical calculations to support his claim. Your eyelids feel heavy. The words on the page are beginning to blur, the small, dense print swimming before your eyes. This practice of reading incredibly dry, moralistic, or technical literature as a sleep aid was a common, if informal, remedy. It was the intellectual equivalent of the bland diet, feeding the mind something so devoid of flavor or stimulation that it simply shuts down in self-defense. Historians of reading have noted that, for many Victorians, reading was not always a pleasurable escape. It was often a duty, a tool for self-improvement, and the line between educational and soporific material was often very thin indeed. You plow onward into a detailed comparison of the flushing mechanisms of various patented water closets, the washout versus the pedestal, the merits of the siphonic versus the valve-based system. The author's prose is utterly devoid of humor or flair. He is a man possessed by a single, solemn purpose: to explain, in excruciating detail, the mechanics of sanitation. You think of other books that might have served the same purpose: a volume of parliamentary debates on the corn laws, a treatise on the proper application of manure in crop rotation, or a quirky favorite of the era, a book of conduct literature, which offered page after page of advice on proper etiquette, from how to enter a drawing room to the correct way to address a duke. The sheer, mind-numbing banality of the subject matter was the whole point. The candle flame flickers, casting a warm, gentle light on the page. The house is silent. There are no distractions. It is just you and Mr. Finch's magnum opus on plumbing. You are now deep into a section on the importance of ventilating pipes to prevent the buildup of explosive methane gas. You read a sentence, "The consequent detumescence of the hydraulic seal is a matter of no small moment, threatening the very salubrity of the domestic sphere." You have no idea what detumescence of the hydraulic seal means, and you have absolutely no desire to find out. Your head nods forward. You catch yourself and jerk back awake. The book is working. It's not a drug, it's not a machine, it's just the pure, unadulterated power of boredom. The sheer, monumental dullness of the prose is acting as a kind of intellectual sandbag, weighing down your consciousness. Your brain, faced with the prospect of reading one more paragraph about pipe diameters, is preparing to make an emergency shutdown. You manage one more page, something about the porosity of different types of brick used in sewer construction. You don't even finish the paragraph. The book slips from your grasp, landing with a soft thud on the bedspread. Your hand is still resting on the open page as your head sinks into the pillow. The candle burns on, but you are already gone, lost in a deep, dreamless sleep, scoured clean by the relentless, self-scouring velocity of Mr. Finch. The sleep you fall into is the sleep of the utterly vanquished. Mr. Finch's treatise on domestic drainage has proven more potent than any chemical or contraption. You wake slowly, naturally, to the soft gray light of a cloudy morning. There is no chemical hangover, no grogginess. There is only the quiet satisfaction of a night finally, truly won. The heavy book is still lying on the covers beside you, a silent testament to its own incredible power. You go through your day with a sense of calm clarity you haven't felt in weeks. The world seems sharper, your thoughts clearer. But as evening approaches, a familiar shadow begins to fall. The memory of your long struggle with the night returns. The book worked once, but was it a fluke? The fear of a relapse, of another long night spent staring into the darkness, is a heavy weight. As you prepare for bed, you find yourself thinking about the whole ordeal. The overstuffed room, the bland food, the restrictive clothing, the terrifying night air, the strange machines, the dangerous drugs, the hypnotic passes, the overexcited brain, the cacophony of the city streets, the crushing boredom of a technical manual. It has been a journey through a bewildering landscape of anxieties. And as you sit on the edge of your bed, it occurs to you that perhaps your insomnia isn't just a physical ailment or a mental quirk. Perhaps it is something more. Perhaps it is a moral failing. This was the final and perhaps the cruelest Victorian remedy for sleeplessness, the belief that it was a spiritual or characterological defect. In a society that prized self-discipline, productivity, and emotional restraint above all else, the inability to control one's own mind enough to sleep was often seen not as a symptom of illness, but as a sign of a disordered character. You recall the words of a popular advice manual for young ladies that you once read. It warned that sleeplessness was often the product of an indulgent imagination, a weak will, or worst of all, a guilty conscience. The sleepless person was not a patient to be pitied, but a slacker to be admonished. To lie awake was to be unproductive, to waste the precious hours that God had given for rest and restoration. It was a form of idleness, and idleness was the devil's workshop. As you lie back in bed, this idea takes root in your mind. You begin to review your own character with a critical, unforgiving eye. Are you too vain? Too selfish? Have you engaged in gossip? Have you harbored uncharitable thoughts about your neighbors? The night becomes a courtroom, and you are both the defendant and the prosecutor. Every small imagined sin from the past week is brought forth as evidence. The sleeplessness is your punishment, a righteous affliction designed to force you into self-examination and repentance. This perspective was incredibly common, weaving its way through medical advice, religious sermons, and popular literature. Historians argue that this moralization of health was a powerful tool of social control, encouraging conformity to a rigid set of behavioral norms. If illness, even something as common as insomnia, was a sign of inner corruption, then the pressure to appear healthy and well-rested at all times was immense. You think of a quirky, though deeply sad manifestation of this belief, the rise of the rest cure. Developed by physician S. Weir Mitchell, it was a treatment for neurasthenia and hysteria, prescribed almost exclusively to women. The patient was confined to bed for 6 to 8 weeks, forbidden from reading, writing, or even feeding herself. She was completely isolated and forced into a state of total passivity. The explicit goal was to break her unhealthy will and rebuild her character along more docile, obedient lines. While not a direct cure for insomnia, it was the ultimate expression of the idea that a woman's mental and physical ailments stemmed from a failure of character that could only be cured by absolute submission. So you lie there, not trying to find a distraction, but actively engaging in a rigorous, painful moral inventory. You pray. You ask for forgiveness. You promise to be a better person tomorrow. You will be more patient with the servants, more dutiful to your husband, more pious in your thoughts. You are trying to cure your insomnia not by treating its symptoms, but by purifying its supposed source, your own flawed soul. There is, of course, no immediate miraculous sleep. The process of self-flagellation is, if anything, stimulating. But over time, a strange sense of exhaustion sets in. The act of intense, focused introspection is draining. After an hour of diligently cataloging your own failings, your mind is simply too tired to continue. The anxieties about unpaid bills and dinner parties have been replaced by a much larger, more exhausting anxiety about the state of your eternal soul. And that, it turns out, is a burden too heavy for a weary mind to carry through the night. Slowly, imperceptibly, the self-interrogation fades, its energy depleted. A quiet, empty calm remains. You are not at peace, not really, but you are spent. And in that profound state of moral and mental exhaustion, your body finally makes its claim. Your breathing deepens, your limbs grow heavy. You have confronted the final, most insidious Victorian cure for sleeplessness, shame, and in the end, it has simply worn you out. You close your eyes and surrender, not to a drug or a machine, but to the simple, undeniable fact that you have no more fight left in you. And you sleep. The long, restless night is finally over, not with a sudden victory, but with a slow, quiet truce born of utter exhaustion. The many cures you have tried, the scientific and the superstitious, the chemical and the mechanical, the bland and the boring, have all played their part in this strange nocturnal drama. Lying here now, in the soft, forgiving light of a new day, the frantic anxieties of the darkness seem distant, like the memory of a strange dream. The heavy velvet curtains, the oppressive furniture, the faint, lingering scents of lavender and laudanum, they are all just silent witnesses to your struggle. You have navigated a world terrified of the very air it breathed, a world that sought solace in poisons and found wisdom in profound boredom. You have felt the ghost of your corset, been rocked by a machine, and calmed by the simple fragrance of a flower. Each remedy was a reflection of the era's hopes and fears. its boundless faith in scientific progress, and its deep-seated anxiety about the fragility of the human mind. The journey has been long, and now it is time for it to end. It is time for a true, untroubled rest, the kind that no potion or prescription can ever truly provide. So now, just allow the story to fade, letting the images dissolve like sugar in warm tea. Feel the weight of your own comfortable blankets, the softness of your own pillow. Listen to the gentle, rhythmic sound of your own breathing, a quiet, steady reassurance in the stillness of your room. There are no cures to try, no remedies to seek. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to think about. There is only the deep, welcoming quiet and the gentle gravitational pull of a peaceful, well-earned sleep. The night is over. You can rest now.